The drive home blurred into highway lights and the low hum of tires on asphalt. I kept the radio off. I did not need music. I needed the silence to let the night settle in my bones. Every mile took me farther from Silver Oaks and closer to the woman I had become, the one who no longer apologized for surviving. I replayed the Gala in my head, not with triumph yet, but with the cold precision of an auditor closing the books. Karen's face when the QR code appeared. The way her voice cracked on liar. The moment Belle stepped forward and the last pillar of her empire crumbled. It was satisfying in the way only long-planned justice can be. But satisfaction is a quiet thing. It does not explode like fireworks. It settles like dust after the wrecking ball has done its work. I thought about the ridiculous rules that had defined my childhood in Silver Oaks. The monthly newsletters Karen sent like papal bulls. Residents are reminded that holiday lights must be removed by January 15th or face a $250 fine. Vegetable gardens are prohibited as they lower property values. Mailbox color must be Whisper White 47. Any deviation will result in a lien. She once fined my mother $2,000 for hanging an American flag on Memorial Day because the pole was 2 inches too tall and visible from the street. My mother paid it. Everyone paid. Because Karen convinced them it was for the greater good. For the community. For the resale value. I laughed once, bitterly, at a red light. The woman who preached standards had been siphoning the very dues meant to maintain those standards into Cayman accounts. The black humor of it stung. Karen Whitaker, defender of perfect lawns, had been growing her own offshore garden of stolen money. And she used my name as fertilizer. I pulled into my apartment complex just after midnight. The building was quiet, clinical, the way I liked it. No HOA. No monthly meetings. No Karen. I parked in my assigned spot, simple number. No rules about tire shine or bumper stickers. I sat there a moment, engine ticking down, and finally let myself feel the weight lift. 16 years. I had waited 16 years to speak the truth in a room full of people who once believed her lies. And I had done it without screaming. Without tears. With nothing but paper and patience. That was the real victory. Not the handcuffs. The fact that I stayed in control while she lost everything. I grabbed the copy of the letter from the passenger seat and walked inside. My apartment greeted me with its familiar emptiness. White walls. Gray couch. No photos. I poured a glass of water, nothing stronger. I had learned long ago that numbness was a luxury I could not afford while building my case. I sat at the kitchen table and unfolded the letter one last time. My mother's shaky handwriting stared back. The sentence that had driven me for weeks. Your name was used to cover the crime. I traced the loops with my finger the way I did as a child. She had known. Even while dying, she had known Karen would come for me. She had prepared the box, the key, the backup. She had trusted that one day I would be strong enough to finish what she started. I folded it carefully and placed it in the small fireproof box I kept in the closet. Not for evidence anymore. For memory. For the days when the emptiness felt too wide. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from unknown numbers, probably reporters already sniffing the story. 1 text from Belle. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Can we talk? I stared at it a long time. Sorry was a start. But trust would take years. Maybe never. I typed back. When the dust settles. I have a lawyer if you need one. Then I turned the phone to silent. Tomorrow the news would break. Silver Oaks would be in chaos. Homeowners would suddenly remember every fine they paid. Every rule they followed. Every time Karen smiled while tightening the noose. Some would feel betrayed. Others would pretend they always knew. A few would try to sue the board for the lost dues. Good. Let them. The system that protected her for 16 years was finally eating itself. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Philadelphia glittered like it always did. Indifferent. Busy. Alive. No gates. No covenants. No Karen. For the first time, the view felt like freedom instead of escape. I thought about the girl at the gate 16 years ago. Cold. Wet. $70 and a trash bag. She had no idea she would grow into a woman who could walk into a gala dressed as staff and bring down an empire with a microphone and a QR code. She had no idea the woman who exiled her would one day stand in handcuffs while the community that worshipped her turned their backs. I smiled at my reflection in the dark glass. Small. Tired. But real. You did good, kid. I whispered. Then I went to bed. Not to sleep immediately. My mind was still racing, but to lie there and let the adrenaline drain. Tomorrow I would call Harlow for an update. Tomorrow I would decide what to do with the rest of my life now that revenge was no longer the engine. Tomorrow the story would be public and I would have to answer questions. But tonight, for the first time in 16 years, I slept without the ghost of Karen Whitaker standing at the foot of my bed. The next morning the news exploded exactly as I expected. Longtime HOA president arrested at own retirement gala for massive embezzlement scheme. The local station led with footage of Karen being let out in cuffs. Her perfect hair mussed. Her face a mask of disbelief. They showed the QR code moment. The projection screen. The gasps. They even had a clip of Belle stepping forward. Social media was on fire. HOA Karen trended locally within hours. Memes appeared. Karen's face photoshopped onto lawn signs that read, "Keep off the grass, or else." Residents posted old violation letters with captions like, "She was stealing our dues while fining us for pink flamingos." One woman uploaded a video of herself ceremonially burning her copy of the HOA handbook in her driveway. The black humor spread like wildfire. I watched from my couch with coffee in hand, scrolling through the comments. This is why I left my last HOA. Karen's gonna Karen until the feds show up. Finally someone exposed the real crime. HOA fees are basically a cult tax. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and detachment. The story was out. My name was attached as the whistleblower former resident. Reporters called. I declined all interviews. This was not about fame. It was about balance. The ledger was closed. Harlow texted around 10 a.m. Transfer frozen. Accounts seized. Vance flipped for a deal. Karen is lawyered up, but the tape is ironclad. You did it, Emma. I replied, we did it. Then I put the phone down. I had work to do. Not revenge work. Real work. My boss at Northline had left a voicemail. Take all the time you need. But when you're ready, there's a new case involving a property management company skimming reserve funds. Sounds familiar. I smiled. Yes, it did. I dressed in my usual gray suit. Professional. Unremarkable. Armor. I drove to the office. The city felt different. Lighter. As if someone had removed a weight I had been carrying on my shoulders for 16 years. At my desk I opened the new file. Spreadsheets. Vendor names. Routing numbers. The familiar hunt for the rot. But this time there was no personal ghost in the numbers. Just the job. Just the work I was good at. Lunchtime I met Marcus for tacos at the place we always went when we needed to debrief. He slid into the booth grinning. You're famous, Harper. My feed is nothing but HOA Karen memes. I laughed. I saw the one with her face on a flamingo. Poetic. He leaned in. Seriously though. You okay? That was a lot. I thought about it. I'm okay. Better than okay. The weight is gone. Now I just have to figure out what to do with the space. He nodded. You'll fill it. You always do. And hey, if you ever need a side gig exposing more HOAs, I'm your guy. Those people are basically suburban cartels. We ate. We talked about normal things, new encryption standards, the Phillies, the terrible coffee at the office. Normal. After 16 years of obsession, normal felt revolutionary. That evening I drove past the old Silver Oaks exit on the highway. I did not take it. I did not need to. The gate was still there in my memory. But it no longer held power. I kept going toward the city, toward the life I had built without her, toward the future that was finally, truly mine. The days that followed were a strange mix of quiet and noise. The FBI continued their work. Karen's lawyers tried the usual tactics: mental instability, forged evidence. She was just a strict but fair president. None of it stuck. The tape of her threatening my mother was damning. The metadata on the transfers was ironclad. Bell's testimony sealed it. I received a formal letter from the State Consumer Protection Agency, thanking me for the information that led to the recovery of over $4 million in misused HOA funds. They were working with residents to issue refunds where possible. Some would get money back. Others would get the satisfaction of knowing the woman who fined them for holiday lights was now facing 20 years in federal prison. I kept the letter in the same fireproof box as my mother's note. Proof that the system, when forced to look, could sometimes work. I started answering a few reporter questions via email. Short, factual, no drama. The story ran in the Philadelphia Inquirer under the headline, HOA President's Retirement Ends in Federal Indictment. Former residents' evidence key to takedown. They used a photo of the clubhouse banner and a stock image of handcuffs. It was enough. The community I left behind was fracturing in the best way. A petition circulated to dissolve the HOA entirely and switch to a simple civic association with no enforcement power. Residents who once feared Karen now spoke openly about the fines that felt like extortion. One older man posted a video of himself planting a vegetable garden in his front yard. Tomatoes, peppers, a defiant middle finger to the old rules. I watched it with a smile. Good. Let them grow. Let them breathe. Let them remember what a neighborhood is supposed to be. Belle called on the third day. Her voice was small, shaky. The house is in escrow. Everything is frozen. I don't know where to start. I listened. I did not offer platitudes. I know a good real estate attorney who handles seized assets, I said. And if you want, you can crash on my couch while you figure things out. No strings. No HOA rules. She laughed through tears. I think I'd like that. Just for a little while. We made plans. It was not forgiveness yet. It was a beginning. The first crack in the wall between us. I hung up and felt something shift. The emptiness I had carried was starting to fill. Not with rage, but with possibility. A sister. A future. A life without the shadow. That weekend I drove to the old Greyhound station. Not for nostalgia. For closure. The bench was still there. The cracked asphalt. The smell of diesel and rain memory. I sat for a long time. I did not cry. I simply sat and let the girl I used to be sit beside me. Then I stood, brushed off my coat, and walked back to my car. I left the trash bag ghost behind. She had done her job. She had survived. Now the woman she became was free to live. I drove home with the windows down. The Pennsylvania air rushed in, cool, clean, full of ordinary life. No banners. No rules. No Karen. Just the road and the future. And for the first time in 16 years, both felt wide open. Monday morning I returned to the office with a different stride. Colleagues gave me curious looks, but no one asked directly. They had seen the news. They knew. My supervisor stopped by my desk with a fresh case file and a quiet "good work out there. Harper. Take it easy if you need to." I did not need to. The work was the anchor now. Spreadsheets. Vendor trails. The familiar hunt. But this time the numbers did not carry ghosts. They were just numbers. By lunch I had already flagged 3 suspicious transactions in the new file. Old habits. Good habits. The kind that built empires instead of tearing them down. In the afternoon my phone buzzed with a text from Harlow. Court date set for next month. Karen's team is trying to suppress the tape. Won't work. Thought you should know the money recovery is at $3.2 million so far. Residents are getting notices. I replied, thank you. Keep me posted. Then I went back to the numbers. After work I met Belle at a small cafe near my apartment. She looked smaller than I remembered, pale, tired, but no longer the polished Silver Oaks princess. She carried one suitcase and the weight of everything she had just learned. "I sold what I could," she said, stirring her coffee. "The rest is seized. I feel stupid. I signed everything she put in front of me. I thought it was normal." I nodded. She made it feel normal. That was the trick. She made all of us think the rules were for our own good. Until they weren't. We talked for 2 hours. Not about forgiveness. About facts. About what she remembered from the years I was gone. About the way Karen's voice changed when no one else was listening. About the night Belle saw her crushing pills into a teacup and believed the story about migraines. Slowly the picture filled in. Belle had been another victim, just slower. Groomed instead of exiled. I offered her the couch again. She accepted. That night we sat in my living room, 2 sisters who barely knew each other, watching mindless TV. No HOA newsletters. No covenants. Just normal quiet. It was awkward. It was healing. The next weeks passed in a rhythm I had never known. Work. Coffee with Belle. Occasional calls from Harlow with updates. Karen's plea deal fell through when new evidence surfaced from the safety deposit box. Carbon copies of transfers in my mother's handwriting. The judge denied bail. The community garden petition passed. Silver Oaks voted to dissolve the old HOA structure and form a voluntary association with zero enforcement power. The flamingo memes continued. One resident started a GoFundMe to buy every house on the block a pink flamingo as a victory symbol. I donated anonymously. Because why not? The black humor had become community medicine. One evening Belle and I drove past the old gate. Not to visit. Just to see. The banner was gone. The clubhouse was quiet. A new sign hung. Silver Oaks. Now a voluntary community. We did not stop. We did not need to. Belle looked at me. I used to think she was protecting us. I kept my eyes on the road. She was protecting her account balance. We drove on. Later that night Belle asked the question I had been waiting for. "Do you hate me for not coming after you sooner?" I thought about it. I did. For a long time. But hate takes energy I don't have anymore. You were a kid too. She played us both. The difference is I got thrown out the gate and you got kept inside the cage. We both lost. She nodded. Tears came. I handed her a tissue. No hug yet. But the wall had a door now. Small. Openable. The court date arrived. I sat in the gallery in my gray suit. Belle beside me. Harlow gave me a small nod from the prosecution table. Karen entered in orange. No power suit. No perfect hair. She looked small. Ordinary. The judge read the charges. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Money laundering. Embezzlement. The courtroom was packed with former residents. Some held copies of old violation notices like trophies. When the tape played, my mother's voice describing the pills, the threats, the plan to use my name, the room went still. Karen stared at the table. No more performance. No fake heart attack. Just a woman who had finally run out of lies. The plea deal she eventually took gave her 15 years and full restitution. The judge called it a long overdue accounting. I felt nothing dramatic. No cheering. Just the quiet click of the ledger closing. Outside the courthouse Belle and I stood on the steps. Sunlight. Normal traffic. No gates. "What now?" she asked. I smiled. Small. Real. Now we figure out what normal looks like. No rules. No fines. Just life. She laughed. "I think I'd like to try growing tomatoes. In the front yard." "Do it," I said. "And paint the mailbox whatever color you want. Even hot pink." We walked to my car. The drive back was quiet but comfortable. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm when the air is finally clean. That weekend I took a rare day off. I drove to a small nursery outside the city. Bought tomato plants, peppers, a ridiculous pink flamingo for the lawn. I planted them in the tiny patch of dirt outside my apartment building. No one complained. No fines arrived. The flamingo stood proudly on one leg, staring at the world with plastic defiance. Belle helped. We got dirt on our hands and laughed like sisters who were learning how. Later we sat on the steps drinking cheap wine from plastic cups. To Mom, I said, raising my cup. And to every ridiculous rule we're never following again. Belle clinked hers. And to the girl who came back with a trash bag and left with an empire in pieces. We drank. The sun set. The flamingo watched. Life moved on. Work continued. New cases. New numbers. But the rage that had fueled me for 16 years had transformed into something quieter. Something sustainable. Something that felt like freedom. One night I stood at my window again. City lights glittering. I thought about the girl at the gate. I thought about the woman on the stage. I thought about the sister on my couch and the tomatoes growing outside. I smiled at my reflection. You did it, I whispered. You balanced the books. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. No ghosts. No shadows. Just sleep. And tomorrow, just another ordinary day in a life that finally belonged to me. Months passed. The story faded from daily headlines but lived on in HOA horror groups across the internet. People sent me messages, former residents from other neighborhoods sharing their own Karen stories. Some asked for advice. I answered a few. Not as a hero. As someone who had been there. Keep records. Follow the money. When the time is right, speak the truth in public. The paper always wins. One woman in Ohio sent a photo of her new front yard garden and a note. I planted tomatoes the day after your story broke. Thank you. I pinned the photo to my fridge. First decoration in years. Belle moved into her own small apartment across town. We met for coffee every Sunday. No pressure. Just time. She started a job at a local library. Quiet. No board meetings. No covenants. She painted her mailbox bright blue. Posted a picture. No fines arrived. The old Silver Oaks group chat, once a place of polite complaints and rule reminders, had become a support network for people figuring out life without a dictator. Someone started a monthly free garden potluck. I drove by once just to see. People laughing on lawns. Kids running. Tomatoes everywhere. No one measuring grass height. It looked like a neighborhood. Not a compound. Work stayed steady. I closed 3 more fraud cases. My supervisor offered me a promotion. I took it. Not for the title. For the bigger cases. Bigger rot. Bigger chance to balance more ledgers. One afternoon Harlow called. Karen's appealing. Claims the tape was coerced. Judge laughed it out of court. You're clear to move on with your life, Emma. Officially. I thanked her. Hung up. Moved on. That evening I sat on my steps with the flamingo and a glass of wine. The tomato plants were heavy with fruit. Picked one, still warm from the sun, and bit into it. Sweet. Ordinary. Perfect. Belle joined me. We talked about nothing important. Movies. Weather. The Phillies. Normal. The kind of conversation I never had growing up because every sentence carried the weight of community standards. Now there were no standards except the ones we chose. I looked at the pink flamingo. Stared back. One leg raised in permanent defiance. I raised my glass to it. To ridiculous rules and the women who break them. Belle laughed. And to trash bags that turn into victory laps. We clinked. The sun set. The city hummed. Life continued. A year later I received a letter in the mail. Not yellowed. Not from a ghost. From the State Restitution Fund. A check for a small portion of the recovered money, my share as the named victim. I stared at it a long time. Then I deposited it and used part of it to buy Belle a new mailbox. Bright blue, custom. The rest I donated to a nonprofit that helped people fight unfair HOA liens. Because why not? The circle felt complete. One weekend, Belle and I drove back to the old Greyhound station. Not for closure this time. For perspective. We sat on the bench. The asphalt was still cracked. The air still smelled of diesel. But the girl who once sat there crying was gone. In her place were two women who had survived and chosen to keep living. We did not speak much. We just sat. Then we stood, brushed off our coats, and walked back to the car. I left the ghost there for good. On the drive home, Belle turned on the radio. Some pop song about freedom. She sang along badly. I joined her. Windows down. Hair blowing. Flamingo in the back seat because we decided it needed a road trip. We laughed until our sides hurt. The kind of laugh that comes after you have stared down a tyrant and won. The kind of laugh that tastes like tomatoes and blue mailboxes and no more rules. When we got home, I planted the flamingo permanently in the front patch. It stood guard over the garden like a ridiculous pink sentinel. Neighbors smiled. No one complained. That night I stood at the window again. City lights. Quiet apartment. Full life. I thought about my mother. About the letter. About the night at the gate. About the stage. About the handcuffs. About the tomatoes. I whispered to the glass. We made it, Mom. The standards are ours now. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. No rage. No emptiness. Just peace. And tomorrow, another ordinary, beautiful day. The kind Karen Whitaker could never control. The kind that finally belonged to me. The years that followed were quiet in the best way. I kept working. Kept closing cases. Kept finding the rot before it spread. But the obsession was gone. Replaced by steady purpose. Belle and I grew closer. We planted more gardens. We painted more mailboxes. We broke more rules on purpose. One spring we drove to Silver Oaks for the new community potluck. Not as victims. As guests. People recognized me. Some apologized. Some thanked me. One older woman hugged me and whispered, I finally planted my roses. They're pink. Karen would have hated them. I laughed. Good. Let them bloom. We ate tomatoes from gardens that once would have earned fines. We laughed under string lights that stayed up past January 15th. No one measured grass. No one checked colors. The neighborhood breathed. Karen's name became shorthand for overreach. Don't pull a Whitaker entered local slang. The pink flamingo population exploded. I saw them in yards, on porches, even one giant inflatable in a front lawn. Each one a quiet middle finger to the old regime. I kept the original flamingo on my own patch. It had become a symbol, not of revenge, of survival, of choosing your own standards. One evening, Belle and I sat on my steps again. The tomatoes were heavy. The flamingo stood guard. She handed me a small box. I found this cleaning out the last of the old house stuff before it sold. Inside was a single photo. My mother, young, smiling, holding baby me. On the back, in her handwriting, for Emma when the rules finally break. I stared at it a long time. Then I placed it on the fridge next to the Ohio garden photo. First real decorations. Belle watched me. She would be proud. I nodded. She already was. She left the box. She left the key. She left the truth. We sat in comfortable silence. The city hummed. The garden grew. The flamingo watched. Life moved forward. No gates. No covenants. No Karen. Just two sisters. Some tomatoes. And a ridiculous pink bird that refused to follow any rules. I looked at the photo on the fridge. I looked at the garden outside. I looked at the life I had built from a trash bag and a letter. And I smiled. The books were balanced. The ledger was closed. The standards were finally mine. And somewhere in a federal prison, Karen Whitaker was learning what it felt like to live under rules she could not change. The thought brought no glee. Just the quiet satisfaction of justice served cold, administrative, and complete. I raised my glass to the flamingo, to breaking rules. Belle raised hers, and to the women who finally get to write their own. We drank. The sun set. The tomatoes ripened. The flamingo stood. And the neighborhood, my new one, my real one, kept growing. Wild. Free. Unmeasured. Exactly the way it should have been all along. Thank you so much for listening to this HOA Karen story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment down below with your country or city. Let's see how far this tale of suburban justice has traveled. If you enjoyed watching the ultimate HOA bully get exposed and the underdog finally win, please subscribe, like this video, and smash that like button to help us share more stories of Karens getting exactly what they deserve. See you in the next one.